Welcome, guys, to the Multiply Leaders Collective. And my name is Josh Folliard. If we don't know one another, I'm one of the co-founders of the Multiply team, along with Garrett Peters. And what are we doing today? Well, in connection with our quarterly live events, what we want to do is we want to create a midday recalibration. Think of it like a 30-second timeout. Kevin works a lot in the athletics world. 30-second timeout to kind of catch your breath, call the right play, and make sure we got the right mindset going into a big moment. That's really what today is. And so I think as leaders, we should do the same. We should take 30-second timeouts, make sure we're calibrated, make sure we've got the right mindset, calling the right play. And I think you're going to get a ton of value out of today. So our vision as the Multiply team is pretty simple. It's, what we already see in Northwest Arkansas is it's becoming an even greater hub of innovation, technology, of thought, and of leadership. And we just want to be a small part of stewarding what's happening in our city, in our region. And if that can be a blessing for other people outside of this, we want to do that as well. And so our mission is we just want to help leaders like you on this call unlock greater levels of performance in yourselves, but also in those you lead and those that are on your team, that are those in your organization. So we're really excited about all that's happening through the Multiply team, through the Multiply Leader Collective. And we'll give you a little bit more detail here in a few minutes about that. Some things are happening in the fall. Garrett, you want to talk and speak to what's coming up?
Yep. Yes, so good to do that. A few things to put on the calendar for sure is June 20th is our next Leader Collective, where we will be highlighting women in leadership at our next Leader Collective, which I'm super pumped about. Very excited about the lineup we have in store for that. And then the following quarterly event will be on August 29th.
Yes.
And in conjunction with that, we'll share more later, but we'll be launching a leadership training program that'll be launching in the fall as well. And so more to come with those pieces too.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to share more about the X-Core Leadership Academy that's going to be launching in September. And I know Kevin is familiar with X-Core and Giant and all that has the offering there. It's a transformational process. But, as we kind of jump into this, I want to give a quick introduction of Kevin and Kevin Deshazo and Better. And you can tell us a little bit about that, Kevin. But Kevin has a best-selling book, How to Achieve Success, called Keep Chopping Wood. Fantastic read, very short read, and really, really powerful. It's very punchy. He also wrote a best-selling book called Leadership Interrupted. He founded Fieldhouse Media to help college athletes, coaches, administrators be better on social media. His focus is helping leaders and teams unlock their potential and performance with Better. He's a partner with Giant, a certified mental performance mastery coach. That just makes me want to be around you more, Kevin.
Yeah, I want to hear more about what that actually means.
I know. I want to hear more about the mastery coach. Presented and spoken at more than 300 college campuses, national conventions over the past 11 years. He's been quoted on ESPN, New York Times, USA Today. And he'll tell you he's fueled by coffee, runs a lot of miles, lives in Oklahoma City. Kevin, man, we're super honored that you're here. Tell us a little bit about Better and the world that you're living in right now. What's going on?
Yeah, so Better, it came from our journey with Giant. So I've been around Giant. My wife was actually employee number 3 of Giant Partners, which was like 2005, 6-ish. So a very early iteration of Giant. So I've been around Jeremy for 20 some years, but when he was moving back from London, I was in the sports space doing some social media stuff, but was really starting to move into the leadership and culture space. And so found what Giant was doing at that time, joined in because as you mentioned, the X-Core process went through that. I mean, I don't say this like hype man or exaggerate, legitimately life-changing. And it was one of those, like, one, I need it for me. In my world as a man, dad, husband, but 2, this is the work that I want to be doing in the sports world with coaches and athletes and administrators and athletic directors. And so we started something called Culture Wins, which then became better over the last couple of years. We
Mm-hmm.
rebranded, and it's a lot of the Giant work that we're going to talk a little bit about today that you guys have seen in your quarterly meetings and the X-Core stuff. It's a lot of those tools. We've created a lot of our own content with the goals to help leaders, specifically in sports, have better mindset, better leadership, and as a result, better performance. But it starts with themselves, but for their staff and for their team as well. So we get to work with programs like University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State University, Florida State University, Mississippi State University, and dozens of high schools around the country trying to help leaders get better.
Yeah, I love it.
That's so good.
Well, that's so good. Let me do this, and then Garrett, make sure I don't miss anything here. But our vision for what we're calling today's training, because man, I'm a former athlete. Garrett is an athlete. In fact, this guy kicks my butt in tennis, pickleball, anything that we play.
No doubt.
That it's true story. But it's just that athlete. What we know is that everyone on this call right now is climbing a unique mountain. Right? They're climbing a unique mountain, and climbing is hard work. We know that our energy is limited. Our time is limited. We know that every single one of you are looking for solutions to problems. That's actually what makes you a leader, is that you're sitting in a place of uncertainty. You're not managing things, you're leading things forward. And we just want to simply add value to your climb. We want to help you catch your breath in the next 45 minutes or so. And there's nothing more valuable, nothing more important than your mindset. I mean, it starts between our ears. We talk about that. And so Kevin's going to be talking a lot about multiplying your mindset today. And so I think if people have questions or want to, what does that look like?
I'm in. Yeah, no, you set it up really well today, Josh. I mean, that's our vision for, the next 40 minutes, 50 minutes that we have. And we'll let Kevin do his thing here in just a few. But if you have specific questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and I'll be managing kind of what's going in.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have time set aside at the end for some Q&A. And so, you can raise your hand when we get to that spot, or that's probably the way to do it. And we'll bring you into the call, ask your question, and we'll rock and roll.
Yeah, we'd love that.
So I think that's all from a structure
Logistics.
standpoint. I think
Okay,
we're
cool.
good on that. And then, I'll just be looking at questions as they come in and things like that.
Well, fantastic. 2 minutes early. Kevin, we're going to turn it over to you, man. Thank you again for just being a part of what we're doing here in Northwest Arkansas today. We can't wait to work more with you. We love what you're doing with Better. And I think the sky's the limit, and there's really, really great days ahead for your organization, for Giant, and for the people connected to those two organizations.
Yeah, I love it. Honored to be here. Excited about what you guys are doing, right? And that's the fun part of what I get to do is get to invest in people that I believe in, who I know who are doing great work and making an impact in their world and their communities and beyond. And I think I love the way you said it, right? Because we're all on this different climb. And the way that you think is everything hinges on the way that you think. And my challenge to leaders is like, the higher you climb, the higher your mindset has to be, right? If you're an entry-level employee, you can think how you want to think. I would challenge you to think at higher levels, but you can think how you want to think. You get that first promotion, your mindset has to go to a different level. You get that next promotion, your mindset has to go to a different level. And so the more you move up in an organization, the more you move up in influence, your mindset has to go with you, right? It's not just you need new skills to lead at certain levels. You need a new mindset to lead at certain levels. And we, I do a lot of work with athletes, and does talent matter for athletes? Of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to know how to execute at the end of a game. You need to know how to execute in your sport, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, tennis, whatever. You've got to put in the reps to be great. You have to be committed to your craft so that you can know how to perform. But the best athletes in the world aren't always the most talented athletes in the world. Right? And we're seeing this last night. If you're watching the Knicks game, Jalen Brunson is not the most talented player in the NBA. He's an extremely hard worker. He's an extremely brilliant player, but he also has a mindset that allows him to outperform what others would say his potential actually is. And so for leaders, like leaders are always leading under pressure and under chaos, because the burden is always falling on us. And so you can have all the skills, all the talent, and we talk about this all the time with leaders. That's what X-Core is gonna help you develop, right? How to cast a vision and how to communicate effectively and how to hold people accountable and how to get alignment with your teams. All those are great leadership skills that we need to be investing in and developing in leaders today. None of those skills matter if you don't think the right way, because the way that you think is going to undermine your actual skill, your actual talent. And so that's what I want to dig into today, is what does it look like to build a healthy mindset? Why does mindset matter? And one of my favorite quotes of all time is that as a man thinks, so he is. And everything starts with how we think. And this is true for yourself. It's true for your relationships. It's true for your business. It's true for your health. It's true for anything. It all starts with the way that you think. So what is mindset? And mindset is a set of beliefs or attitudes that determine your outlook and your behaviors, right? So simplified, thoughts lead to actions, actions lead to outcomes. And so the way that we think about a person, about a situation, about ourselves is going to drive our actions. And those actions ultimately determine the outcomes that we get in our life. So if you have a negative thought about a person, let's say you've got an employee who's just been difficult, right? They're causing you some stress. If you think negatively about them, when they come in to have a conversation, you're not going to give them your best attention. You're not going to give them your best energy. You're not going to give them your best communication or your best coaching. Your negative thoughts are going to lead to you not giving your best action, which is going to lead to a worse outcome with that person, which is going to make them even more difficult. On the flip side, if that person, they've been difficult, there's some stress, but before they come in, you're like, you know what? I know they've been difficult, but I really value this about them. I really appreciate this about them. I see this potential in them. And you start to coach yourself up on the way that you think about them. When they come in, you're like, hey, I know we're dealing with this situation, but I need you to know how I see you. And here's where I'm trying to get you to. It's not always going to be easy, but I believe the best in you. And here's what I think that looks like. How do we figure out a plan to get there? Doesn't always guarantee the best outcome, but it gives yourself the best possible chance for a successful outcome, which is what we're trying to get, right? And so if we want better outcomes in our life, in our relationships, in our influence, in our business, we have to have better thoughts. And what I would challenge you is like that thoughts are a choice, right? Thoughts are a choice. Now, not your first thought, but your second thought is a choice. I think the most positive people that you know in your life, their first thought is still probably negative, right? Because we're humans. We have a tendency to be negative. But that second thought, they've trained themselves where that second thought is a positive one. And that allows them to have better outcomes. And it's because they practiced it, right? You get good at what you practice. So why is mindset important? Mindset directly influences your behaviors and your attitude. A mentor of mine gave me a quote one time, or a formula. He said, your circumstances plus your perspective determine your experience. All right, our circumstances are what they are, right? You can't control your team. You can't control your spouse. You can't control your business. You can't control the economy. You can't control the industry. You can't control competitors. Circumstances are what they are. What you control in those moments is your perspective. And you're going to have a better experience when you choose a better perspective. I'll give you a real world example of this. So acquaintance of mine, 40 years old, this time last year, he started having some stomach pain. Ignored it. Finally, in July, he goes to the doctor. His family had been pushing him to go to the doctor for months. He's like, it's fine. I'm just stomach issues, stress. And goes to the doctor. He's got cancer and he's supposed to be dead by Christmas. And like, that's actual adversity, right? Most people in lives were like, oh, my boss didn't like my idea. I need a self-care day. I'm really struggling. Like, I'm really going through it right now. Well, that's not adversity, right? You just had a little bump in the road. You get told you've got cancer, you got 4 months to live, and you've got a wife and you've got 2 kids under 8 years old. Like, okay, that's real life adversity. And so he created this Facebook group where he's just kind of keeping people updated. Good news is, as we sit here, May 3rd, 2024, he's still here. But he made a choice and he wrote it down and said, look, I'm not just going to like curl up in the fetal position and say, okay, take me. He's like, I'm going to live. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be a husband. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to go on vacations. I'm going to run my business. Like, he had the perspective in that moment. And again, I'm not saying his first thought was like, yes, cancer, like what great news. No, it was, are you kidding me? And there's shock and there's despair and there's all these emotions, but he got to a space of saying, no, I'm going to choose how I deal with this thing. I didn't choose my circumstance. I didn't choose to get cancer, but I'm going to choose my perspective in the middle of it. And that's giving him a better experience in the process, right? He's been living life as opposed to just withering away. He chose his perspective. So your mindset directly determines, influences your behaviors and your attitudes. It determines your openness to challenges. Right? Life is full of adversity, and it doesn't matter how good of a leader you are, how good your character is, how good your team culture is, how wealthy you are. Life is full of adversity. It is guaranteed. And your mindset determines how open you are to that adversity. When it hits, you know what? I quit. This is too difficult. I can't take it. Or you say, hey, this is the challenge in front of me. Let's figure out what I'm made of. Let's figure out how we get through it, how we get around it, how we get over it. Right? Your mindset determines your openness to challenges that you're going to face in your life. It impacts your resilience. And I think we see this, so many people. I think the American dream is actually the pursuit of comfort. And I would say that comfort is the enemy, because when you get comfortable, as soon as you get comfortable, like you want to then get rid of everything that is a threat to your comfort. And yet the things that are a threat to your comfort are often the things that are going to make you better. And so when difficult moments arise, most people, because they've been choosing comfort, they've not trained that resilience muscle. And so they don't know how to deal with hard things. There's a great quote, if you're in the sports world, you've seen it. But it was Kara Lawson. She's a Duke basketball coach. She goes, we have to do hard better. So like, how do you get better at doing hard things? You just keep doing hard things when they show up. That's how you build that resilience muscle. And it is, as a parent, like there are certain things that I want for my kids. I don't care a whole lot about the career paths they choose. I want them to be resilient. I want them to be mentally tough. I want them to be able to take whatever life throws at them and keep taking the next step forward. But that doesn't happen on accident. And your mindset shapes your relationships and your influence. Think about it. You don't want to be around people who are negative. You don't want to follow people who are negative. You want to avoid them at all costs because they make situations worse. Now, we do need to make sure we're really clear on negative people and people who see things with a critical eye, because those are two different things, right? And we tend to label people who are critical as negative, right? You bring an idea to them like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? Like, oh my gosh, you're so negative. Like, no, they see the holes in the plan and they want to make sure it's better. So when we run forward, if we commit to it, we're actually on solid ground. We're not going to make mistakes. That's very different than you showing that plan like, it's not going to work. Terrible idea. I don't like it. It's never going to, that's being negative, right? Having a critical eye is valuable. Being negative is not. And so we don't want to be around negative people. If we have an unhealthy mindset, ultimately we're not just going to limit our potential. We're going to limit our influence with those in our lives. So I've wrestled with this phrasing on this a lot, to be honest with you, of undisciplined versus discipline. I've wrestled with weak versus strong, with positive versus negative, healthy versus unhealthy. For a long time, I just said weak versus strong. And then people started getting offended when I said you have a weak mindset. I would like, not to a specific person, but when I would frame it that way, like, well, that's kind of negative. I was like, well, you're kind of proving the point. Maybe you have a weak mindset. You shouldn't be offended by it. But because people with a disciplined mindset, we should be unoffendable. Right. To be unoffendable by things in life, I think is a superpower. It's a sign of a strong mindset. Mm-hmm. But I've kind of landed on discipline versus undisciplined. So what does it look like? An undisciplined mindset is pessimistic. They're chaotic, right? They're all over the place. They're distracted. They can never focus on what they need to focus on. And they're always distracted by other people's opinions, their fears, their insecurities, their worries, the drama, whatever it may be. They're overly negative and they give up when it gets difficult. People who have a disciplined mindset are optimistic. They're calm, they're focused, they're positive, they're resilient. And like, that's the definition of a person that we want to follow, especially as a leader, right? Think about when your team is under pressure. What kind of leader do you need to be in those moments? Nobody wants to follow you if you're like, guys, this is all going to fall apart. I don't see any possible way out of this. Like, what? What do you mean you don't see a way out of it? It's like, you're the one who's supposed to help us find a way out of it. We want to follow people, and that doesn't mean leaders always have to have the answers, but they have to believe that an answer is possible, right? To look at reality and say, hey, guys, I know it's difficult right now, but I do believe we can get through this. I believe we have the right team to get through this. I believe we stick together, we fight for each other. We'll find a way through this. It may not be easy. It may not be as fast as we want it to be, but I do believe that we can find our way out of this and get to a better place, that this will make us better. Those are the leaders that we want to follow. And to have a disciplined mindset, what I've realized in my life for a long time, and when you guys start to go through X-Core and different things, you're going to learn about the 5 voices and different personalities. I'm what Giant would call a connector. And so I thought discipline was a personality trait. I thought it was for the guardians of the world, for the detail and the structured and the organized people. And I was like, and like the phrase around me and my friends, like, well, I'm just not, details really aren't my thing. I'm just not a disciplined person. And I believe that was the result of an undisciplined mindset. I believe that lie about myself. And then when I wrote Keep Chopping Wood, I wrote that because I wasn't a disciplined person. I wrote that for me because I realized that discipline is not a personality trait, it's a skill. And it's something that you train in yourself with anything, with your health, with your diet, with your finances, with your communication, but also with your mindset, which means it's available to everyone, right? The people that you know who have good mindsets, they're not special. They've just chose to build a good mindset, right? They're not any different than you and I. They've just said, I'm going to choose to be different. And so over time, they've become different. Those who are negative, they've just made the choice to be negative. And you would say, I'm not choosing to be negative. Are you choosing to be positive? Are you choosing to be optimistic, to be calm, to be focused, right? You get what you practice. And so if we're not intentionally choosing to have a disciplined mindset, we are accidentally choosing to have an undisciplined mindset. So how do we build that positive disciplined mindset? 4 things I want you to think about. Number 1, you just have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of the way that you think. And so one thing you have to consider is is the way that you think an asset or a liability to you right now? Is it making things better in your life, in your relationships, in your business, or is it making things worse? Is it creating more drama and more frustration than should exist? Because there's always going to be some frustration or some tension. That's part of this pursuit of getting better and leading teams and organizations. But when you have an unhealthy mindset, you have unnecessary drama. You have unnecessary frustrations. And you can't change what you are unaware of. Right. So think of if you're in a meeting and you always do a certain thing in a meeting and it drives people nuts and you have no idea. And you're just going to keep doing that thing because you don't know that it's bothering people. You're unaware of it. Well, 6 months later, someone on the team's like, hey, Tim, like, I love you to death. I don't think you mean anything bad by this, but every time you do this in the meeting, it's driving us crazy. And it's really having a negative impact on the team. You probably don't even see it. I know you don't mean it, but I just thought you should know. You're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Well, now that I'm aware of it, I want to change it. All right. You couldn't change it before because you didn't know that it existed. The same is true with your mindset. You have to be aware of the way that you think. Take stock of your mindset. Like do a thought audit throughout the day. Try to think like, was I positive in that situation or negative in that situation? Was I stressed in that situation or calm in that situation? Do some self-reflection at the end of the day. Reframing the way that you think, reframing your situation. Every challenge, I know this is super cliche, so sorry, but it's also true. But every challenge is an opportunity to get better and to grow and to learn something. Every bit of adversity, every difficult situation, every obstacle that's put in front of you is an opportunity if you see it that way. Most people don't see it that way. So let's do just a real quick thought exercise. So wherever you're at in your room, look around and find every red thing that you can possibly find in that room. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, how many yellow things were there? You don't know because you weren't looking for the yellow, you were looking for the red. This is how we approach our day, right? You're not looking for the opportunities and the obstacles, you're just looking for the obstacles. You're not looking for opportunities to be grateful and positive, you're just looking for why things are going wrong and why things aren't perfect for you. When you start to reframe your mind and retrain your mind, you start to see the opportunity in the obstacles that are in front of you. Again, you know people who are this way. Like, man, nothing phases them. Like they've faced this and this and like they just keep going. Yeah, because they have proper perspective on that situation. It's like looking at you've seen the picture of like success looks like this, right? You're just always there's just these peaks and valleys. But if you put a frame around a valley, you'd say that's failure. And that's the whole story. But that's just a part of the story. When you take the frame off, you see, oh, that's just a dip, but I'm actually, over time, I'm moving in the right direction. So when you reframe things, you have a better perspective, which allows you to take better actions. Better inputs. Inputs lead to outputs. You're not going to eat trash food and be healthy. I know we know that, but it's amazing how many people eat trash food and wonder why they're not healthy. It's like your inputs determine your outputs. So think about what you're putting into your mind. Could be music you listen to, it could be the news that you listen to, it could be podcasts you listen to, it could be people that you listen to, it could be social media that you consume. Is it making you better? Is it having a negative impact on your thought life or a positive impact on your thought life? Social media is a great example. I love social media. I spend a lot of time there, but I've curated my feeds. I follow a lot of people that I don't agree with because I always want to have different perspective. I don't want to live in an echo chamber, but I don't follow people who are negative and complaining, who are just there to not provide a different perspective, just to complain about what's going on. That's not helpful. So what are your inputs and how are they leading to good or bad outputs. What do you need to turn off and what do you need to turn on, right? Better thoughts in, better actions out. And the last thing is patience. You didn't get an unhealthy mindset overnight, right? You didn't just wake up and be stressed out, be negative, be anxious, be distracted. Like, you didn't get there overnight. It was day after day after day after week after month of not choosing to be positive, of not choosing to be calm, of not choosing to look for the good. And so, as with anything, you don't flip a switch and get better overnight. It's going to take day after week after month of choosing to look for the good, of choosing to be calm, of choosing to be positive, choosing to control yourself, right? We live in a world where everyone's like, your emotions get to go in the driver's seat. Like, your emotions are most of the time wrong, and they're going to change every 5 minutes. And it's exhausting for you and everybody else around you. And so it's not to dismiss or suppress emotions, but to say, I can recognize my emotion, but control my response to a situation. But it takes time. You have to put in the reps just like you would with anything else. So here's what I want to get to. Some of you guys probably heard about this concept of neuroplasticity. It's essentially the ability of the brain to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience. Normal terms, thoughts change your brain, right? Your brain changes over time. For years, they have thought that the brain was static and that your DNA was your destiny. Like, who you are is who you are, how you think is how you think. In recent years, they've realized that our brain changes. And so you have these things called neural pathways in your brain, essentially like railroad tracks. And every thought is laying down a path. Every thought is laying down a track. And so the more that you have negative thoughts about yourself, about others, about situations, the deeper those tracks become, the deeper those paths become, and the more natural those paths become. The good news is you can rewire the way that you think. So what it looks like is that thoughts change your brain, which impact your thoughts, which impact your brain, which impact your thoughts, which impact your brain. So if our thoughts impact our brain, we need to learn to control our thoughts. So what happens is negative thoughts, oh, going too fast. We'll get there. All right. When you have a negative thought, goes into the brain, and it essentially, for lack of better phrasing, a negative thought does brain damage. Now, not in the sense of like, if you take a pencil and like nick your brain tissue, you turn into a vegetable. Not that kind of brain damage. Brain damage in terms of it limits your brain's ability to function as it was designed. So when you have a negative thought, it limits your ability to be calm, to be focused, to be positive, to be innovative, to be creative, which means you're more likely to have another negative thought. All right. Once you think a thought, it becomes easier to think that thought again. This is how these neural pathways get formed. And so over time, this is how people just become negative people, because they've just had negative thoughts over and over and over. And it's just laid that track in their brain to be a negative, stressed out, anxious, fearful, worried person. And again, we've just decided a lot of this is just personality. Oh, I'm just an anxious person. No, you're not. You've practiced it over and over and over and over, and it's now become who you are, but that doesn't mean it has to be who you are. You can always change. Faith is a part of my world, my life. There's a great phrase, says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that is physically what is happening in the brain when you choose positive thoughts. Your brain is renewing, it is growing, it is strengthening. So when you have a positive thought, it makes your brain stronger and more likely to be positive and calm and focused and innovative and creative and resilient, which means you're more likely to be able to choose another positive thought to make your brain even stronger. So when you do this time and time and time again, you start to rewire those neural pathways in your brain to change who you are, to go from being a negative person to being a positive person, from an anxious person to a hopeful person, from a stressed out person to a calm person. It's because you start to choose better thoughts. And again, for me, it's let your first thought go. You get to choose your second thought. And over time, like when you start out, like maybe you can't control that second thought or your third thought or your fourth thought or your fifth thought. Maybe they're all negative to you. Maybe the 10th thought is where you have to start. Whatever it takes to finally get to a positive thought. If it's your 10th thought, great. In a year, maybe then you can be at your second thought. So again, you have to be patient along this process of learning to train the way that you think. So if you've been around Josh and his team, you've probably seen this tool, Know Yourself to Lead Yourself. You got to understand your tendencies when it comes to your thought life. Realize the actions that causes you to take, again, in your work, in your relationships, with your health, with your finances, with whatever it may be, and ultimately understand the reality that is creating around you. And say, if I don't like the reality around me, what am I doing to create it? Because you can't change your boss or your spouse or your team or this. Like, you get to change you. As leaders, our job is not to change other people. Our job is to change ourselves and invite other people on that journey, to live in such a way that others like, whatever you have, I want it. Like, great, let's go. Right? That's the Sherpa mindset. Like, I'll get you to that next level of the mountain. You can't get people up this mountain of mindset if you've not climbed it yourself. And so you have to own the energy and the reality that you've created for people based on the way that you think, which gets down to this concept of inhibition versus prohibition. This is a giant tool. So again, Josh and his team, you'll learn this when you're going through X-Core. It is such a powerful tool because it's amazing how often we blame them for what we do or what we say or how we work. Like, well, they won't let me, or they're not gonna, but they said, it's like, who's they? Like, who is they? Most of the time, they is me. I'm the one. It's not prohibition. Nobody's stopping me from getting better. Nobody's stopping me from creating the change. I'm stopping myself. My limiting beliefs are actually what's holding me back. Now, sometimes there are prohibitions, right? There are industry regulations. There are certain laws. There are certain things within your company that are policy, like, hey, I can't do this because it's not allowed within our organization. Great. Most of the time, the thing holding you back is you. And it's because you've allowed an unhealthy mindset to take root and you've convinced yourself. And the beauty of this, by the way, is that when everybody else is the problem, it means you have to do nothing. Well, I'd get better if only they would change and this would change and that would change. So you get to sit back and you get to always make excuses because you'll change whenever everybody else changes, which means you're never going to change. Leadership is about taking ownership. No. What about me needs to change? I can't control these external things. I get to control me in the way that I think, in the way I act, in the way that I show up. And so to rid yourself of these limiting beliefs, I can't be a good leader. I can't build a successful company. I can't do what it takes. Who told you that? My favorite question to ask people when they start making excuses, why I can't run a marathon. Who told you you can't run a marathon? I can't lose 50 pounds. Who told you can't lose 50 pounds? I can't build the $10 million business. Who said that? Nobody said that. Their own negative thought life said that. And we can address that. We can actually fight those lies with truth and overcome them to unlock our potential so that we can help other people unlock their potential. So, little thought exercise. I want you to think of a particular goal you have or a situation that you're currently in. Goal could be a business goal, could be a personal goal, could be a relational goal that you struggled to make progress on. Who or what is truly stopping you? You may want to think, who have you blamed? But who's actually stopping you? If it's you, and again, usually it is you, how will you overcome those inhibitions to move forward? How will you speak truth to those lies and finally take ownership? Say, no, that thought is not going to prevent me anymore. I'm going to choose a better thought. And here's kind of how I like to think about thoughts. If we go to a restaurant today, let's say we go to lunch here in an hour, and I'm going to look to the menu. I'm not going to find the worst possible thing on the menu. Say, okay, what here is going to give me indigestion? What's going to give me heartburn? What's just going to ruin my next 2 days? Yep, I'll have that. And sign up to ruin my next 2 days. No, I'm going to look through the menu and say, okay, what am I really going to enjoy? What's going to give me the best experience? What's going to taste the best? What's going to allow me to go be normal for the next 2 days? And I'm going to find that thing. Thoughts are the same way. There's negative thoughts on the menu, but positive thoughts are always on the menu as well. You just have to look and find them. You don't have to settle for the negative thought that's going to make things worse. You can look through the menu and find a better thought and let that one take root. And you may have to repeat it to yourself over and over and over until it becomes reality. So being a better leader starts with having a better mindset. Here's what I want to do real quick. I think I lost my screen. I want to show one more little quick exercise. If it's on here. Here we go. Okay. So last little exercise I want to give you guys. So a mindset challenge. Here's what I want you to do. Because like thinking about mindset, great. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to actually start to change your mindset? What does practicing a healthier mindset look like? Number one, in the mornings. I've done this. I started this practice about August of 2020. So COVID was like 3 or 4 months in. I thought the world was going to be back to normal. It was not back to normal. And so I started getting a little bit anxious. I'm like, okay, I thought I'd be back out on campuses at this point. Like what And I didn't like I recognized, I was aware of those negative thoughts, didn't want to be that person. There's an app that I use. It's called Day One. I think it's free. I'm not sure. You don't have to use it. You can use Notes app. You can use whatever you want. But every morning, I write down 10 things that I'm grateful for. Every morning. And you don't have to go big. People are like, I don't know. Like, did you wake up today? Yep. Okay. Be grateful for that. Do you have clothes to wear today? Yep. Be grateful. Do you have food? Do you have a bed? Go as small as you want. It doesn't matter. I have done this, again, an undisciplined person who's learned to be disciplined. I've done this for 1,312 out of 1,314 days.
Oh.
And because what it does is no matter what happens in my day, do I have stressful days? Sure. Do I have days where I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? Sure. Doesn't matter. There's always 10 things I can find in that day to be grateful for. And when I know I'm going to have to write 10 things down in the morning, I'm looking for those things during the day. I've trained myself to look for the good, even in the midst of stressful situations, which is a massive competitive advantage in leadership, but also in life. Kind of a little bonus is write down what I would call I am statements. And I know like self-affirmations can be weird and silly and goofy. I was listening to a psychologist talk about this recently, and someone was like, did these actually work? And she was like, oh, absolutely. He's like, are you sure? I thought they were ridiculous. She goes, yeah, they don't work for you because you think they're ridiculous. Your mindset has already decided they don't work, and that's why they don't work. I was like, there's a word. But when you start to speak these over yourself, and you can, it's the power of visualization, which we use a lot in sports, but visualization matters. When you start to see yourself better and speak to yourself better, you start to live that out. So to say, I am a great leader. I am a great, whatever it may be. I am confident. I am secure. I do have what it takes. Just write down 3 to 5. I don't know, it can feel a little bit like the Stuart Smalley, like I'm kind, I'm handsome, and gosh darn it, people like me, or whatever you would say on Saturday Night Live. Again, it can be a little bit weird, but what happens is you're choosing positive thoughts in order to create different neural pathways to allow you to take better actions. You have to start to speak positively over yourself. Self-talk is such a major thing when it comes to mindset. The evening, it's just some self-reflection, right? Like, hey, what did I handle well today? To acknowledge the progress that you're making. Here's a major bonus. 2 minutes ago, perfect. In your calendar app, and I learned this from another giant named Amy Norton. She's unbelievable, sweetest person in the world, and she does a lot of work with the U.S. Air Force. And she would, she knew that if she went to the Air Force with an unhealthy mindset, she'd walk and like, all right, guys, hopefully we'll get better today. Hopefully like the session, and we'll just see how it goes. Like, game over, right? Nobody's listening. And so she felt those negative thoughts building. And so she put in her calendar. So take your I am statements, and she put them as reminders in her calendar throughout the day. So at 9:30, I'm confident. At 11:30, I can do hard things. At 2 o'clock, I'm valued. At 4:30, whatever. Again, whatever your I am statements are, but they start to be reminders throughout your day. And I will promise you that they will start to change the way that you think about yourself, and as a result, change the way that you operate. Because these negative, you're not going to accidentally be positive. You have to be intentional, right? Your mind is a battle, and you don't fight a battle with hope. You fight a battle with action, and so you have to put practices in place to start to retrain your mind to make it work for you rather than against you. All right, right on time.
So good. You just made a statement that was, you said you're not going to accidentally be positive.
Yeah.
It's tapping into that like intentionality. You're not going to accidentally climb to the top of the mountain. You're not going to accidentally acclimate to get to the top of Everest. It's going to take months or years of acclimation, preparation, planning, intentionality over time. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Hope is good fuel, but it's a terrible strategy. Like hope's not, it may keep us going, but it's not a good strategy for change.
Yeah, that's so good. Let's do some Q&A. I know that I'm sure there's that have some stuff. Raise your hand in the chat. I believe that's
bring some questions.
Bring some questions. Kevin's ready to do that. The good thing about what you just said, Josh and Kevin, is something I was wrestling with as you were talking is this feeling of like I'm behind. It's like just having a bigger kind of perspective, Josh, to your point around it's going to take time to prepare to climb. Like it's just about the right next step and doing the right next thing, because we all feel that gap,
Yep.
in some way. And so I think that to me brings a lot of like comfort of like, hey, I'm not where I want to be, but I can take steps to get there.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And for, we use a tool a lot called the change equation. And it's when your
Mhm.
dissatisfaction and your vision, right? And if your
Mhm.
dissatisfaction is greater than your vision, you're hopeless, right? You're frustrated, you're upset, you're dissatisfied, but you don't know what you want. You don't know where you want to go. But when your dissatisfaction is high, and that's okay, but your vision is the top of the mountain. You're
Mhm.
like, I don't like where I'm at, but I know where I'm going. When I wake up, I know the direction I need to be moving. It may take me long to get there, but I know that I just need to take the next step and the next step. And so I think when you have that vision, and part of that is some of these I am statements, is you crafting a vision. What do you look like with a healthy mindset? How would that version of you operate? Have a vision, like a specific vision for how a confident, secure, humble, positive, resilient version of you would show up. Like,
Yeah.
that's the me that I want to be creating. I won't get there today, but I'm moving that direction.
So you're saying develop not just a vision of where you want to go and what you want to do, but like develop a vision of who you are,
That's right.
which is that I am statement
That's right.
mentality. I got a question while we're waiting on others to be bold enough to jump in. And I'm gonna call on Blair Perry needs to jump in if she's there. So, but here's my question for you, and I'll preface it like this. I've discovered that one of the things that prevents me from consistently doing exactly exercising this is fatigue.
Mm.
Fatigue, right? I think it was Lombardi said fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Mhm.
Fatigue turns me into a completely different person.
Yeah.
And so, how do you fight fatigue? Has that been an issue for you, or are there other issues that come into play when you're dealing with staying on top of your mindset?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, we talked about it a lot. This idea that rest is a competitive advantage for leaders.
Mhm.
We know it impacts athletes, right? Rest impacts their performance. The better they rest, the faster and better they're going to recover, which allows them to have a better performance the next game. That's not an athlete thing; that's a human thing. And
Yeah.
so rest impacts your mental performance, right? If you're fatigued, you're not going to be as focused. You're not going to be as calm. And so, one, you have to make rest a priority. The older I get, I don't know how to phrase this, but the older I get, the older I become. Maybe like the older, like I go to bed early. It's kind of
I
what I'm
can
saying.
resonate with that big
Yeah,
time.
and
I try
and it's
to. Yeah.
but I get up. But part of it's because I get up at 5 o'clock to
Mhm.
start I like have a morning routine. So every morning there's an investment in mind, body, and soul. And so the gratitude journal is part of that. Working out is part of that. And my commitment to that is because I don't always feel like it. Right. I may be on the
Yeah.
road. I may be traveling. It could be whatever. But it's I want to live yesterday's commitment, not today's feelings. And so like I'm never too tired to actually get better. Now, that doesn't mean like, if you can take a day off, take a day off, right? Like rest, recover, recharge.
Say what
That
you just
is,
said again about say that again, that phrase, that quote, yesterday's commitment quote. That's
yeah, I
really
want to live. So if I committed yesterday to doing
yeah.
certain things today, right? To investing in my mindset, investing in my
Yeah.
health, I want to live yesterday's commitment, not today's feeling. Because I
Mm.
decided it yesterday. Hey, I'm going to do this tomorrow. Well, when I wake up today, I may not feel like it.
Mm.
I'm tired. I don't need to go for a run today. I don't want to work. I'll just go tomorrow. No. Yesterday I committed to it.
Yeah.
And so part of that is that's a mental hack to build confidence because
Mhm.
you're keeping your commitments to yourself. You can't trust yourself if you don't keep your commitments to yourself. And so when you live those commitments, you start to become a person like, no, I can do that because I've kept my promises to myself. I know that I can do the next thing.
Do you have a like an exit routine? That's what Michael Hyatt would call it, like a um, when you talk about yesterday's commitments, do you have a space that you build in or some kind of routine or tool that you use to kind of hack into tomorrow, if that makes sense mentally?
Um, I don't. That's a great. I like the thought of that. I don't. I've just kind of built. It's become now for me, and so again, the gratitude journal, whatever,
Yeah.
1,312 out of 1,314 days. I've worked out every day since um, November, um, and really October, but I got sick for 3 days in November, so I couldn't get out of bed.
Mm.
But as I've honored those commitments to hey, I'm going to do this, and this
Yep.
tomorrow morning. I don't have to think about it anymore. And so it's
Yep.
just become now when I wake up, it's just kind of what I
It's
do.
it's what you do.
Yeah.
So I think that, one question that comes to mind, I'm not 100% sure the raise hand thing is working, and I'm sure people,
There's a few that are coming in though.
oh, they are? I can't see them. Oh, I see Q-Day.
Oh, there they
Yeah,
are. Yep.
let's see. Oh man. Okay. Let's go to this question from Joseph Elder. As Kevin, as we change our mindset, how do we call up those that we lead to a similar place or space consistently that both challenges and supports? Where do we start? How do we maintain the ground? That's such a good question, Joseph.
Joseph, bringing the heat here. Okay. So basically, how do we get others to have a healthier mindset, right?
Yeah.
And calling them up versus calling them out. Nobody's going to have a better mindset because you embarrassed them and told them their mindset sucks. Your mindset sucks. Oh, great. Help me change. It's not going to go well. So I think one, you don't have to be, how do I want to phrase this? You don't have to be at the top of the mountain to bring somebody along with you. You just have to be a little bit ahead of them. So you don't have to wait until you're fully transformed, right? If that makes sense. And because number one, that's not a real thing. It's an ongoing process. Like you can't take the foot off the gas when it comes to the mindset piece, or we're just going to drift back to the negative. So I think one, it's as you're on this journey, it's inviting people in, like, hey, what I've realized in myself, like my mindset's been pretty negative. I've realized how that's impacted my leadership, my communication, the team. I'm working on that. Do you want to go on this journey with me? So that's part of leadership, is just inviting people on a journey with you. And that's not even suggesting they have a negative mindset, but everyone can work on their mindset. And so one, she's like, hey, do you want to do some of this work with me? Great. If it's kind of a specific employee or team member or one-on-one, I think it's asking them in a moment privately, like not in a team meeting, obviously. Ask them hey, how are you viewing this situation? Let them answer that. It's like, do you think that's a helpful or unhelpful perspective on the situation? And it's kind of holding up the mirror to them to say, let's get your perspective out. I don't want to assume your perspective. I want you to describe how you're thinking, what you're seeing, what your mindset actually is. And then let's have a discussion. Like, do you think that's going to help you solve this problem? Do you think it's going to help us solve this problem? Or do you think that's actually hurting us? And you're doing that in a kind way, right? Again, you're not trying to shame them, but to get them to say, yeah, I'm probably with that mindset, I'm probably not going to come at this problem the right way. I'm probably not going to come at this discussion the right way. I need to start changing the way that I'm thinking. And to be like, yeah, you're probably right. Not mad at you, not trying to shame you. Like, what would be a better thought process? How can we better approach this? What would be a better perspective? And so when you start to ask them good questions, that becomes kind of the internal challenge of like, I might not be where I want to be. What do you guys think?
I think you just use the word. I work with a baseball team in Louisiana, and Matt Daggs is a genius at hitting, and he talks about, he uses the word approach over and over and over, and you win the at bat before you ever step into the batter's box.
That's right. Yep.
And so that on deck routine becomes everything. And I think you nailed it in that sense. But that's something I'm trying to implement deeper and deeper, is before every conversation that I walk into, before every event, before every moment, before every project, how is my approach? How am I calibrating my approach? Can I take an intentional 3 minutes before I walk in the door to this meeting and calibrate my approach to make it others focused, about them, make sure I'm in the right gear, and going forward in a way that's intentional. I think we got another question too. Gary,
I'll jump in. Joseph Wood has a great question, and Kevin, speak to this. It's how many times, how long does it take before you begin to see results? I mean, I think he's right about this adage of, does it take 21 days to build a habit? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, from your experience and expertise.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Probably 3-4 weeks. I mean, it depends on it. There's a lot of factors, right? How negative is the person? How unhealthy is their mindset? If they're a little bit, if they're kind of in the middle, like borderline neutral, just a little negative, like we can get to positive or get to healthy or get to confident fairly quick. If there's some real things to battle through, they've just believed some lies about themselves, about other people. If they're just whatever, life has won the battle too many times. It could take longer for that work to take root. And that's when it's that type of situation, whether it's yourself or somebody else, again, that's where patience, it's not going to happen overnight. And so celebrating every small win, possible. Because it can be really easy when someone, let's say you're trying to hold someone accountable for a certain behavior change, and they agree, like, I know I need to work on that. Let's figure out a plan. Yeah, but that behavior has been hardwired into them for years. And so they, in the next 5 meetings, they're great. They're really intentional. They're paying attention. They're not engaging in that behavior. In the 6th meeting, they revert to their old ways. It's super easy. Like, oh, see, I knew it. I knew they were never going to change. There's same old Joe, And it's like, no. Like, it's a process. Don't beat them up. Encourage them to stay on the path. People will never change if we keep beating them up when they make mistakes. And so you have to be, if you're leading someone through mindset change, you have to be like, Dabo Sweeney calls it being an overbeliever. Like, you have to be the person who believes in them more than anybody else. Because what I believe when it comes to mindset is, however you want to frame this, the enemy is going to try to, like, if you're working on it, it's going to get harder.
Yeah.
Every lie is going to get louder. These whispers are going to become screams. Every situation is going to be ramped up. And it's like, anytime you're trying to get better, the world kind of works against you to keep you average or to keep you negative. And that's especially true with the mental piece. And so you have to heavily, heavily believe in people to keep fighting for them, but also do that for yourself.
So good. Two things that come up. Maybe we can get 2 more questions in potentially, but one piece Joseph put in the chat. Can you restate, Kevin, the statement you made about hope? Hope is not a good strategy.
Yeah. Hope is good fuel, but it's a bad strategy.
Hope is good fuel, but is a bad strategy. That's
Meaning,
really
so let's go back to, right? Like, if I'm trying to get to the top of the mountain, if I'm hopeful that I can get there, like, that's motivation, that's excitement. Like, I believe I can get there, right? Hope or belief, however you want to frame it. But I've still got to have a plan to get there. I can hope all day long, but if I don't have a plan, if I don't have a process, like, I'm just every day I wake up and hope, and then eventually that hope dwindles because I'm not actually making progress.
One thing that I'd love for you to speak to, Kevin, is just it's where we're at now as a people, as a culture, as the leaders. Like, what's different now, unique to where we're at in 2024 versus 5 years ago, let's say, and
Great
then
question.
what have you seen? There's just such chaos. There's so much.
Yeah.
You talked about inputs. Like, there's so many inputs. Like, what is different and unique about today? And then how have you seen great leaders like combat some of those obstacles?
So this is a wonderful question. Let's see, where can I get? I'm going to share this real fast. Here's the best way I can describe it. A lot of this is informed by my conversation with Jessica Rimmer, who's another giant, who's just brilliant. We have leadership for most of our lives was down in this bottom right. High challenge, no support. Facts don't care about your feelings. Just get the job done. I don't care how you feel. Just do the work. There's good from that because things got accomplished. There's obviously bad from that. People get used and abused and burn out. My thing is, like, in sports or business, you can win that way for a season. You're not going to win that way long term. We have shifted. We started the shift probably in the last 20 years. And in the last 4 years, it went all the way over to protect. High support, zero challenge.
Yeah.
Your emotions are everything. How you feel determines how you act. Your feelings are true. Empower your feelings. And that causes mass chaos. So this is overpowering. This is overwhelming. And it's overwhelming for the person to just let their emotions take control, but it's also overwhelming for everyone around them because people are just all over the place based on their emotions of the day. And so that creates chaos within our families, within our organizations, within our communities. And so for leaders, there's never been a more important time, because that's what tends to happen, right? Is the pendulum like overswings. It's like we were here, instead of settling here, we went all the way over here. And it's like, no, we have to start to course correct and say, again, like, you don't need to run over people, but like, yeah, you had a hard day. Great. You still need to show up and go to work. It wasn't that hard of a day. We have to have, like, there's levels to adversity, right? There's levels to hardship. There's levels to difficulty. And we've made, when your emotions are the driver, everything feels like the most difficult thing. And it's like, no, it was a bad moment. Doesn't mean it was a bad day or a bad month or a bad year or it's overwhelming. It was a moment. You didn't close the deal. The client canceled. whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's life. And that doesn't mean you're like, oh, whatever. There's like,
Right.
man, that sucks. Okay, now what? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What next? And so leaders have to be really, really intentional to have that healthy mindset to be able to
Mhm.
help people course correct to say, hey, I know that happened, but this is what needs to happen next. We don't need to derail everything. We take the next step. This is chaos is part of the process. Failure is part of the process. Being disappointed is part of the process. Expect it, take the next step.
So good.
So that's so good. Josh, before you wrap up here in a minute, just
Yep.
one, I think that this question was actually just answered. Andrew Ellis put in the Q&A, what do you do to get your mindset back to the right place on those days that seem like failures, have taken you so far back? And I think you just nailed it. Like what I heard you say, Kevin, is having that right perspective. Yes, you had a bad day, you had a bad moment, but that doesn't define completely the work you put in. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
Right.
like not like completely take you down.
Yeah.
So
Well, and say I failed. So it's saying, oh, I don't have the right mindset yet.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you're
That's a
still working on it.
powerful
And that's
word.
okay. It's
Mhm.
to back up and say, I screwed up. I failed doesn't mean I'm a failure, right? It's a data point. It's not the whole story. And I think to be able to, it's really important to, I think, especially in the early days of any growth, to catalog your wins. And so
Mhm.
when the failures hit, you're like, yeah, but I had this and this and this and this and this went well. This is just one thing. Because we tend to soak in the negative and ignore the good things that are happening.
So true. And one thing that you hit on while you were talking earlier is having gratefulness and
Yeah.
put that at your forefront.
Yeah.
That begins to overtake a bad moment, right? You're like, I
Mhm.
have great things that happened today too. So it's like that. I think you nailed it earlier about developing that grateful mindset. So anyway,
Yeah.
And it becomes like a flywheel too, right? Like
That's right.
you over time, it works for you. The disciplines
Yes.
you build work for you, almost,
Yeah.
like money works for you. You can put it
Yeah.
to work.
And what's
Um,
funny is you don't notice it
all of a
because it starts
sudden,
to become second nature, right? You have a difficult moment and you're
yep,
like, man, that sucks. All right. So now I need to, and you just
yep,
keep moving. You don't realize, like, wait a minute, I've
yep.
changed. I'm confident now. I'm resilient. I'm whatever, and so we always notice the negatives that we don't notice when things are going well.
Well, my takeaways here today, and I have a lot, but I've summed it up to these: was hope is a good fuel, but a terrible strategy. Got to have a strategy to really have an approach to my mindset. Rest is a competitive advantage for leaders. There's probably a reason why, the threshold for us having the capacity to climb with the right mindset is because we're exhausted and not getting the rest we need. And then the three for me was I want to live yesterday's commitment, not today's feelings. So making sure that I take the time to define what does winning look like tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I can live in that, walk in that. So good, Kevin. This was incredible content, incredible conversation, incredible questions. I just want to take a minute and thank everybody who jumped on the call and who's still with us. We're going to be doing this again June 20th, and we're going to be highlighting some amazing, incredible female woman leaders who are just knocking it out of the park. And you're not going to want to miss that. You're going to want to invite some people to that. So we want to encourage you to go ahead and get that on your calendar. You can go to multiplyleadercollective.com and you'll see a link there that says June 20th, and you can go ahead and register for that webinar. Again, our sponsors have made it free. Couldn't do any of this without our sponsors. So grateful for the Giant family, for Jeremy Kubicek, for Kevin Deshazo, Tracy Rader. I want to shout out to Tracy, who's on this call, and all the work she does behind the scenes in Giant and within the world of people. Great days ahead. Kevin, thanks again. And we will see you guys soon. Thanks for jumping in. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man.